Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their is who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's conversation is one of the most powerful stories of resilience, identity, and transformation you would hear. I'm joined by Jessica E. Taylor, whose life changed instantly at 31 after a devastating brain injury that erased her memory and forced her to relearn everything from basic skills to her own identity. What followed wasn't just recovery, it became a lifelong journey into consciousness, spirituality, and understanding what it truly means to be human. Now, decades later, she continues to share her story of transformation, resilience, and the deeper connection that shapes our life. Jessica, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me as your guest. It's very sweet.
All right. Okay, Jessica. So, can you take us back to your 20s? Who were you before the accident, and what did life look like for you at that time?
You mean what happened before the accident?
Yes, who were you before the accident? What was your
Oh,
20s like?
yeah. Well, for starters, as a child, I was a professional stage actor. Um, and then when I grew up, I turned to nursing special needs children and
Hmm.
got married, emigrated to Canada, and opened a Merle Norman cosmetic studio in Toronto. Um, and it was just 3 months after opening that I had that dreadful accident.
Hmm.
I was out on business, collecting supplies for my studio, and unfortunately, the sales representative um, was driving me there to pick up supplies, and he went around to the back entrance of this place where he had all his supplies, and it was pitch darkness. I couldn't see much, but I did see a green door um, in front of me, um, and to the right of that green door, there was picture window where I could see hairdressing appliances. So I assumed when he opened that green door, reminds me of the song da 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 the green door. When he opened that green door, um, there was no light on there at all.
Hmm.
So, but I assumed that I was on ground level because of looking at the picture window to my right, being on ground level. But unfortunately, there was a small landing, pitch dark. He couldn't reach the light because the switch was way down the steps a long way. And I just took a couple of steps on that small landing and just went head first down
Hmm.
yeah, 15 stairs. And unfortunately, there was a steel plated, 12-inch steel plated door. Somebody said, waiting for your head, Jessica. And that's what caused all the problem. But there's been miracles in my life that I believe in totally. For starters, I was selling wigs in my studio, and
Hmm.
1969 was literally wig boom year. And I was wearing one as demonstration, but mostly because I was my store hours were 10 on to 10, Monday to Saturday, and did not have time to go to the hairdressers. So with the 2.5-inch split on the right side of my head,
Hmm.
already there, even through
Hmm.
the wig. Can you imagine if I had no wig? Everybody says if I had no wig on, I wouldn't be here today. So that wig, even though I had extensive brain injury. If I hadn't the wig on, I would have probably died at the bottom of those stairs. So that was one of the miracles. And then what happened afterwards, because there was no CAT scan or MRI at the Toronto General Hospital in those days, even after 2 weeks in that semi-conscious state in the hospital, I was let out into the world with undetected brain injury. It took years and years before the words brain injury were given to me. But the other, what I call the other miracle, is the fact that I seem to have gone into an altered state of consciousness. And this is what's fascinating all my readers in both my books, my memoir, From Tragedy to Triumph, and my investigation of the so-called paranormal, A Spiritual Awakening and Search for Hidden Truths. That people talk to me as a result of reading these books about the altered state of consciousness that I believe I had. Because like there I was, unable to do anything. I knew nothing. The slate was wiped clean. I didn't know anything, Joy. I knew nothing about life. Everything was gone. Like a baby born knows nothing. And literally I became a child in an adult body. And of course, there's a lot of tragedy came about, but there's also a lot of humor came about through that. But the things that happened to me is what fascinates everybody, and even myself, to be honest. I'd be sitting on a chair and people around me are talking, and of course I don't understand. I might as well be on another planet and not know the language or people or anything about it. But I'm sitting on the chair and they're talking, and I find myself clinging onto the seat of the chair, literally clinging onto it. And I didn't know why. I just felt I was going to zoom out somewhere. I could feel maybe my subconscious. I still haven't got to the bottom of what it was I was tapping into, disappearing from my body. That's the only way I can describe it. And years later, a lady said, Jessica, what you were doing was unknowingly grounding yourself by holding on to that chair, that you were probably going to zoom out from your body, leave your body, like they say Jesus did when he was on the cross, so as not to suffer, into this altered state of consciousness. And the other things that happened to me then, I had a third eye vision. And it was unbelievable. This is like a 1 inch in diameter movie happening in the center of my forehead. And there were 20 women. I was one of them. We were in modern clothes, obviously enough. And we were outside some huge big building, white building with white big pillars outside. And there was a photographer taking photographs of us. But that's not the miracle. The amazing thing that happened was that I could see, can you imagine, the movie is 1 inch in diameter. I could see faces, legs, arms, bodies, like as clear as like they were in front of me now. And I could see their lips moving when they spoke, and I couldn't hear voices, but I could see their eyelashes moving up and down, their eyes. I mean, this was just so extraordinary. I actually wrote to the famous Dr. Ian Stevenson, who did the book 20 Cases of Reincarnation, who he studied children who had past lives, and he knew all about this third eye experience. And he said it's not uncommon. It doesn't happen an awful lot, but it's not uncommon. And so that made me feel, okay, I'm not gone absolutely crazy altogether. Because that's something that people kind of think brain injured people have gone nuts, but you're not. It's that your brain is not active like it is on anybody else who hasn't had a brain injury. It's like the cells get all mixed up, and then you lose out on all of the things that you were able to do previously. But poems came to me in the middle of the night as well, beautiful poems. One came from the beautiful spiritual group, the Essenes, which I put in my book. And like there I was, I couldn't write a letter to anyone, Joy. I wouldn't know how to write a letter. And yet I'm woken up at night and with pencil and paper beside my bed, here these words are coming from somewhere else. They're not from me. There's no way those poems came from me when I couldn't even write a letter. So this is another investigation I did for my books about spirits on the other side coming to people and giving them these words. And I sometimes think all art form comes this way. How does a little 4-year-old child start writing music? Advanced music. And all of the things that people don't understand that are happening around the world in terms of their artists who are doing painting Rembrandts, and they're special needs people. And yet they're painting Rembrandts that are absolutely identical to the Rembrandts. I looked into all of this kind of thing for 20 years. And then, unfortunately, too, because of the fact that there was no guidance for me, I was never told that I had that terrible brain injury at the start. I just felt I wanted to die. And you probably know that, like footballers, so many of them who've had a head injury from, banging their heads against each other's helmets, commit suicide when they stop playing because they just don't know what's happened to themselves. So I was at that stage of life as well where I didn't know whether I wanted to live or die. And I guess something in me made me want to live. And but I didn't know what to do, how to keep myself alive. So I was lucky to be befriended by a lovely spiritual man who said, Jessica, I want you to go to the library and go to the research room, find books, and just start learning again. And oddly enough, when I went to the library, the librarian said I had to ask where that room was. And the librarian asked me, what did I want to research? Now, this was the other paranormal miracle, whatever you want to call it, thing that happened. The word God came from my lips. Now, I didn't know about God. I didn't even remember the word from any past history. So where that came from is another thing that we have no idea where it came from. Spirits on the other side, my guides, helpers, who knows? But in going to that research room, what I studied literally unearthed hidden truths, which I call jewels in my book, A Spiritual Awakening in Search of Hidden Jewels. And I was self-educating just for myself, Joy. I mean, studied people, geniuses like Plato, Darwin, Aristotle, you name it. All this took 20 years before I was able to write my book. And literally, Vatican encyclopedias, you could say, jumped out for me, like to look up. So, in other words, I was able to list translations, discrepancies in the Bibles, and the many Bibles there are. I have the list in my book, A Spiritual Awakening. But even though there's discrepancies, underneath are scientifically linked with, the wording is scientifically linked with the metaphysical impact on humans. And then I discovered things. By the way, I have to look at notes because my memory is not well enough to be able to remember what I wrote in my book. So I'm turning to these notes. I established in the 20 years of research that Roman emperors back in 400 and 500, they started the universal church to build an army. As people probably know, the Romans wanted to conquer the world. And they were affiliated with the church, so I don't blame the church for these discrepancies. So the decision was to make one God, as opposed to the people worshipping goddesses like Issa. People were worshipping their own gods and goddesses. And then the control element came about from getting people to believe in one universal God. And then I found that even the pagan celebration dates with different meanings, like Easter and Christmas, were taken on because the pagan religion was very much revered in those days. And actually in Ireland, there's a teaching now for paganism, and a lot of people are believing in that religion. I know that the church teaching may have taught that they wanted to have people do good instead of evil, which was around all of that time that the Christian organization was instigated. But at the same time, in all of my research, I studied reincarnation and interviewed priests, clergymen, you name it, in different countries, and found out that there are actually 7 books in the Vatican Library about Jesus' life in India, in the East, and Lhasa, places like that. The man that I interviewed who told me this actually played golf with Vatican officials. And when he asked those officials why this truth was kept back from people, literally that man's words broke my heart. He said they weren't intellectual enough to understand it, the whole concept of reincarnation. then I established a beautiful word, Elohim, when I was studying the Hebrew religion. And Hebrew, God is Elohim to these people. And it's a plural noun. It does not depict a singular God. In Judaism, it encapsulates both masculine and feminine attributes. Then I learned more. I studied the Nag Hammadi library findings, the Gnostic scriptures hidden in jars and found in 1945. There were gospels of people like Mary Magdalene, Paul, Thomas, Philip, and John, all housed at the Coptic Museum in Cairo. And they all suggest that Jesus was decidedly married. So I found this was contradictory to what the general public were being taught. I mean, some of what I've researched was considered blasphemous by the early Roman Church. And it is the Roman Catholic Church because it was organized in Rome. And to speak about the paranormal or supernatural was to potentially disrespect what is sacred mystery to them. But that said, the word supernatural should not be looked on, in a bad way, because the word comes from the Latin word supernaturalus, which means above, divine, heavenly, and the word natural derives from the Latin word naturalis, meaning produced by nature. Then I discovered another religion was called dynamism, and the belief that the universe gives energy to all life. And I wrote several chapters about this, not just this religion, dynamism, but about the energy of the universe, because the universe is alive and it emits a prevailing conscious energy to all life on the planet. And I assumed that that's what those early Roman church people called God. And this powerful consciousness and its metaphysical energy has to be the source of all creations, from what I established, humans and creatures down to the smallest microism, are supernaturally and metaphysically connected to that universal prevailing consciousness called God that unites us all. Hence the term, we are all one. Consciousness is everywhere. And of course, I wanted to explore that because of the fact that I seem to have an altered consciousness after the injury to my head. And then I started researching on psychic people. How did they get there? I put it all in the book. How did they get to be psychic like this? Telepathy and all of these other so-called paranormal things going on in the world. I mean, all life has function. All life on Earth has a certain level of consciousness, intelligence, along with a purpose for being here. For example, how is it that a tree knows where to produce, when to produce fruit? Plants know when to produce flowers and give out such beautiful smells. Birds know how to migrate without getting lost hundreds of miles. Why do insects run when somebody goes near them? They know that they're going to be harmed. Where is that intelligence coming from? It has to be from the universe. And look how dolphins speak using their sonar. How do they know to do that? There's an elephant story that is in my book about a man in India who had a pet elephant. And when he's away from that from his home, the elephant misses him so much. People can see how distressed it is. And when the owner is 2 miles away from his home, the elephant starts walking to meet him. You know, how does a mother animal know to nudge their newborn when it starts getting its legs, to walk, strong enough to be able to walk? They do this to make the animal walk away from predators. Then I studied trees and established that there is a tree, scientifically proved. This tree was fed up because this animal was biting off its leaves, and that tree dispersed the most awful smelling whatever onto the leaves so to stop the animals from biting, and it did stop them. How do these kind of things happen? People need to know about them, investigate them. Although I've done all the investigating for my book, A Spiritual Awakening. But one of the things I omitted to say at the start is that I met a beautiful canon of the Roman Catholic Church, Canon Keane. He was 90 years old, retired. And I went to his house in Ireland, and we just gelled. I would love to have married him. But he told me that the Vulgate Bible of 400 AD, compiled by St. Jerome, was only allowed for priests, that the general public could not get it. And in that Vulgate Bible are 52 chapters called Ecclesiasticus, and reincarnation is in there. And then I learned from him that the word theology to the Vatican actually means the science of the supernatural, which is contradictory to the way they speak about the supernatural being something that's not good to know about. And from him, I learned about the origin of the papacy, which is not known to anybody else. It was just, my readers and friends say, I think what was happening with that canon, he was more or less confessing to you things that he was not allowed to tell his congregation, and now wanted to finally let it out so that he could pass away in peace and not feel bad about holding things back from people, which was the general education for priests at that time. And reincarnation, he totally believed in it himself. And if he actually told me that the word reincarnation at the Vatican is metempsychosis, metempsychosis, and then, which means the passing of a soul into another body. So why is it that is at Vatican level and they're not sharing that with people? This is mind-boggling. And then we spoke about a Roman emperor by the name of Justinian, who actually put out curses to people in Rome if they believed in reincarnation. And I have the list of his curses in my book, A Spiritual Awakening, as well. And then I established that St. Gregory, 590 to 604 AD, wrote the words, "It's absolutely necessary that the soul should be healed and purified, and if this does not take place during a life on earth, it must be accomplished in future lives." Now that is spelling out reincarnation and the purpose of having a soul. He also shared some teaching for priests that I'm able to divulge. And it's God grants the soul the grace to be formed like God and united with the Holy Trinity. It becomes God by participation. Then another life of intellect, perception, and love becomes possible in the soul. Now, that is a teaching for priests that is not shared with the public. And then we discussed another man, Giordano Bruno, 1548 1600 AD, a poet, philosopher, mathematician, astrologer, and humanist. He was burned to death by the Roman Inquisition as a heretic in 1600. He argued that the soul is not found within the body and that the spirit is the life of the universe. We need to know, sorry about that phone, it'll take a message. We need to know, Joy, more about our frequencies in our consciousness, our vibrational frequency. From all the studies I gave in all those years, it made me realize that it's according to our degree of frequency of our vibration, the more we can accomplish. We don't, if we're on a very low vibrational frequency, we don't accomplish an awful lot. But the higher we go, the more we can accomplish. And I found, again, tracing through Bibles for years and years and years, I found that St. Paul actually said, he called that vibration the spirit. And he actually said the manifestation of spirit is given to prophet. One is given the word of wisdom. One is given the gifts of healing. He was referring to people having that high vibrational frequency. And then I discovered the only way that people can do this to get on the highest frequency possible is to be above anger, greed, jealousy, hatred, envy, all of those negatives, which disappeared from me after my injury. Not one day since then have I ever witnessed any of those emotions. Are you still with me, dear?
Yes, I am. Yes, I definitely.
I don't know if you feel the same as me, but I feel the wrong perception of ourselves. We need to be looking at the bigger picture, that we're in charge of our own life as part of a universal, beautiful, conscious energy, divine energy, and not rely on something else to define who and what we are. You know, even meditation I studied, and believe it or not, when people meditate, their vibration is 100 hertz frequency. So meditation is you know, doing meditation, yoga, as well as being above anger, greed, jealousy, hatred, and all of those terrible negatives, are ways to raise our conscious vibration.
No, honestly, I totally agree with what you say. And one thing I must say is that your story is that of resilience, and also it's a miracle, honestly, because
Well, it is. People call me a miracle.
yeah, it is a miracle because after such injuries, it's not many people get back from who they used to be after such injury. You did not just recover, you're even now better than how you were, right? So it's indeed a miracle, and I really do admire that part about you, honestly.
Thank you
And
so much.
yes, All
Thank
right.
you.
I'm honestly grateful for the insights you had to share to my audience today. And I hope that my listeners would, learn from what you've said and would adapt that spirit of resilience. Yes, I hope my listeners just could adapt that spirit of resilience, identity, and also, transformation. Yes, thank you so much, Jessica. This has been amazing.
Thank you. And I have a website, jessicaetaylor.org, where people can read more about me.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jessica. And yes, to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone you think might need this, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. And once again, Jessica's website is jessicaetaylor.com. All right, Jessica. I'm
Dot
gonna be
.org.
visiting
It's dot
the
.org.
art.
.org. Dot .org.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. JessicaETaylor.org. I'm gonna put the link in the show notes so it's easily accessible to listeners.
Thank you so much, dear. Lovely talking. I hope I didn't get too mixed up. But
No, you
it's
didn't actually. I found it interesting, honestly. I mean, your story is very interesting. And then your take on some things in this world, I also find them interesting, honestly. So it's one that I have to explore. Your takes on, spirituality, consciousness, and human connection. I think they are interesting. So yes, I really did find this conversation. I found it very interesting. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes.
And by the way, that study that I did for 20 years was for me to learn about life and people and who I am and what I am and what, the whole kabang. But because my research was so astonishing, I had to share it with people. And that's why I wrote A Spiritual Awakening.
Oh, spiritual
And I
awakening.
don't want people to think that I'm knocking and cutting up the Roman Catholic religion. I'm not. The people, it's good for them to believe, to like be good people and share and help others in that. But what I'm against is the deceit and the dogmas, like what that Roman Catholic canon shared with me. That's unfair. That's what I don't like. That's unfair that what he told me is not shared with the public and kept in secret with priests. That's not right. And the Vulgate Bible should have been for everyone, not just for priests, with 52 chapters called Ecclesiasticus in it, all removed from modern Bibles. This is the kind of discrepancy and thing that I just don't like, but it doesn't turn me against the Roman Catholic Church. It just the deceit from way back in history is what I'm against.
Okay, all right. Well, it's funny because not many people know that this is deceit, right? It's what we've been fed, it's what we've known all along. And for you to be able to do your research and find out these truths is it's astonishing, honestly, and it's one that I think people should look into. Right. I think everyone should look into it and have their point of view about things like this. So, yes, for me, I'm going to explore your work and your book. And yes, I'm going to explore everything and see what I think about
Thank
this.
you.
And probably, and probably when I get to a conclusion, I'm going to reach out to you for us to do like a part two so we can basically discuss what I think and, what you think too.
Yes, lovely. Thank you. I love speaking with people, and what I say to them seems to be helping them a great deal of their understanding of what
Mm,
because we're not a who, we're a what. We're a
exactly.
what and a who. We're part of a universal consciousness, And we're stronger than we're being led to believe, way stronger people.
Hmm, exactly. Thank you so much, Jessica. This has been amazing. And yeah, I hope my listeners are going to learn from this also. Thank you, Jessica. Do have a wonderful day ahead of you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with my audience. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, dear. Namaste to you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.